Okay, welcome back to part 2. So, again, if you're new here, welcome. I hope you like the content. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are returning, hey friend, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started in part 2 of this video on how to do my tutus. In part 1, I showed you how I rolled out my tool, rolled my tool back up, and cut it, even though I had a hard time cutting it. Excuse me, in part 1. Now in part 2, I'm going to show you how I sew my tutu. So here's my tool, and I'm going to fold it this way. So I have the bulk of the tool. I'm facing my sewing machine to the left of me, and I'm just going to let it fall. And then I'm going to take these 2 ends of my tool, and I'm going to fold them together. Now this is how I do my tutus. Everybody else, they do their tutus however they want to do. You're going to see some people sew their ribbon on first. I can't do that. That was difficult for me. So I do my waistband for my elastic first. And what you want to do is you want to use a 1-inch seam allowance. And I'm using the Singer heavy duty machine. And so for me, that's like right at the tip of the screw is where you want to be. And so when I sew, I always have the access of my tool to the left of me to my machine. And I kind of have my tool straddled between my legs, because for me, it makes it easier for me to control and kind of see what I'm doing. And I line my tool up before I get started. I always check my tension and all that before I get started, because when I sew the elastic closed, I always increase my tension. So I'm going to put my tension back on 0. I have my needle position in the center, and I have my stitch width at 2.5 and my stitch length at 2.5. And I'm now on a straight stitch because I was on a zigzag. So that's why I always check before I get started. So now, like I was saying, I'm just going to make sure that my tool is nice and lined up before I get started sewing. And I noticed by having my tool up, it makes it easier when I'm sewing. It's almost kind of like it just stays together. And we're going to go forward stitch. We're going to stitch a few stitches, and then we're going to back stitch a few stitches to kind of lock the thread in place. And so I just sew and keep my tool lined up as best as I can. A lot of people say using a walking foot on your sewing machine makes it easier when sewing tool. I'm sorry, I got a headband on. My hair is like all kinds of crazy. So excuse me, I've been working hard the last few days. I purchased a walking foot. I used it, the first time I used it because I was sewing a blanket with Minky, and it was great. Loved it. Had a hard time getting it on because I had long nails at the time. So I had a hard time getting it on, but once I got it on and I sewed my blanket, loved it. It was a breeze. Tried sewing tool on it, hated it. I felt like I had no control of my tool. So I switched my foot back. So that's just me. You'll just have to try it out for yourself and see if you like it or not. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to sew. And I'm going to straighten my tool as I go. And I have my sewing table. It's not all the way up against the wall, so that way I can kind of just throw my tool behind the table as I sew. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep on sewing till we get all the way to the end. And once you get to the end, you want to do just like you did in the beginning. You want to forward stitch a few stitches. And then you want to back stitch a few stitches to lock it in place. And then I'll come back with the next piece to the video. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, definitely list that in the comments. And I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And don't forget to like, share, and comment. Happy stitching. See you guys in a few.
No way.